Welcome, travelers. We're aware that your journey was difficult, but prepare to have your questions answered, for you have been granted an audience with the Masters of Modern.
And welcome back to Masters of Modern. I am your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Michael Grothy.
Hello.
Ben's not here today. He's on an airplane as we speak. I stole his suit and am upping the game here, and Michael is pulling my move of graphic tee and sweater, and so that's what we're doing today. And today we have a very special guest, probably the coolest Magic player playing the game right now, Dana Fischer.
Hi.
Why don't you let the world know who you are?
My name is Dana Fischer, and I am the youngest person ever to make Day 2 at a Grand Prix, and I've been playing Magic for almost 5 years.
And I mean, we have this list here. You've been to 24 GPs?
Yep.
I think that's almost twice as much GPs as I've been to.
Yeah, me too.
And Michael used to work at GPs. Like
I did. Yeah, I used to work at them, and I don't know if I definitely never made it to 24.
And when you made Day 2 of what was the format that you were playing?
It was Modern, because that's the format I play most, because I have the most practice with it, so I do better with it. So I mostly look for Modern GPs.
Okay. Well, that's same. I think I've mostly played in Modern. The only other one I've played in is Limited, and that was because it just happened to be in a city that I was in on the same day. But almost all the time, it's the Modern GP.
Wow.
So how did you get into Modern?
I got into Modern because I loved Elves and Standard, but then Origins rotated out, and Magic Origins was in Standard, but then rotated out, and that made Elves not possible anymore when it rotated out. So, and I was sad that I couldn't play Elves anymore. So then a guy at our local games shop said, "Hey, if you like Elves in Standard, why not try them in Modern?" So then I started playing Modern towards the end of 2016, and my dad saw that, GP Vegas is coming up in 2017, and I did Modern Elves for that. It ended up being my best finish then, even though it was my first Modern event. But I had no sideboarding because my dad didn't even know that the rules had changed, that I could have a guide.
Oh
yeah.
That's so cool, because that's like kind of why they created Modern, was so that like if you were playing Standard and your like favorite deck, you couldn't play it anymore because it rotated, you were able to like play those same cards in Modern. That was like one of the reasons they came up with it. I mean, I guess originally it was like Extended or whatever, but Extended wasn't very popular. And so like one of the draws of Modern is you got to play with all your favorite cards that like you can't play with in Standard anymore.
Like once you join Magic, you get to play with all these cards you like, but then they go away, and where do you find a home? And it's in Modern.
It's Modern. This is like the perfect Modern story. This is what Wizards intended when they created Modern.
Wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Every day learning things on Masters of Modern. So Elves is your favorite deck. Why do you like Elves so much?
I like Elves a lot because they're super tiny like me, because I'm very tiny for my age. And they're green, which is my favorite color in and outside of Magic. And at GPs, when I play my rounds, it's a quick deck so that I have more time to like relax my brain, eat food.
That was something, there was a good conversation on Twitter a few weeks ago that was like, what, if you could play any deck, Modern deck, which deck would you play? And my answer to it was, for fun with friends, I want to play like a slow, dirtily control deck that I get to like have a lot of fun interaction with. But at a GP, playing a deck that's fast and quick, you want like is probably better, because then you get to take breaks and you actually get to have lunch and drink water between rounds. And if you're going to be playing through all 20 rounds of a GP, having time is really important.
Yeah, I like to draw lots of cards, but I don't really ever want to play like just a blue-white control deck or anything like that at a GP because it takes so long to play your rounds. It just drags on. Like I like to play a deck that draws a lot of cards and has some combo in it instead when I go to a GP because I like to just be able to like, I won on turn 6. I'm done. I'm going to go eat.
So let's talk a little bit about the deck in Modern. So can you let us know, like, how does an elf deck play?
Basically it goes, it's going to ramp up so that I can play a bunch of creatures at once and then get card advantage with, like, Collected Company and or Lead Stampede. So then I could have a bunch of cards in play, and that's what the deck likes to do. Create a bunch of creatures, aka elf creatures.
Okay. And then what are some of the strengths?
They work together, and they are very synergetic, which I like about them. And they can often be fast, which gives me more time for food if my stomach is going raw. And they can also win on, often times they'll win on turn 4, sometimes turn 3, and it's possible, not likely, but it's possible to do it on turn 2.
Oh, how do you win on turn 2?
You win on turn 2 by basically having Heritage Druids and Nettle Sentinels, to get to and elites, Heritage Druids and Nettle Sentinels to land, and then you create a bunch of mana, do Coco, get Elite and Shaman, do Coco, Shaman, so that you shaman your opponent to death because you have a lot of creatures with also you have 3 shamans.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay. Yeah, that does a lot of damage very quickly.
Yeah, Heritage Druid is wild.
I bought my first Heritage Druid actually recently.
It's a good card.
I need it for a commander deck.
It's a very, very good card.
Yeah. What are some of the weaknesses of elves?
Well, they are very, extremely weak to sweepers. Also, they don't have very much destruction pre-board, so if I'm against like a combo deck, I can't do anything about their combo. I just have to beat them quickly.
That's when comboing out with Heritage Druids is...
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you have, like, comboing faster than your combo opponent definitely seems like an option with this deck.
Yep, it definitely is.
What would you say your best matchups are?
My best matchups are probably creature decks like Human, Spirit, Smurfolk, Hate Bear, and Tron. And so also maybe some other uncommon decks that I haven't even heard about. But mostly just those.
And then what would you say your worst matchups are?
I think combo decks, especially Storm, and is it Phoenix too? Just get control and Living End. Are some of the bad ones. Actually very bad ones. Mm-hmm. Also Infect because they're just faster.
Okay. And then right now in the metagame of Modern, which is, obviously one of your bad matchups, is that Phoenix is very popular. But then recently Humans and Tron just are making a big comeback, which are 2 good matchups. Would you say that Elves is good, well, or badly positioned?
Elves are... They aren't badly positioned, but they're not good positions. I think they're like in between or so. Like they can go to Humans and to Tron, but then they just go wah 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 to is it Phoenix?
And which I mean, I think that's also something that's true about Modern in general. Is almost any deck is kind of mediumly positioned, where you have the chance, as long as you're really good with your deck, to do really well at a tournament, regardless of what the metagame looks like, because there's so many decks in Modern that the chances that you're going to fight against Is It Phoenix, even though it's 30% of the field, you could just not fight one or only fight one for the entire GP.
Yeah, and I mean, if you've been playing Elves for 5 years and you play against somebody who's been playing Arclight Phoenix for 2 weeks, you have a pretty good chance of beating them,
Right.
I think, even though it's a bad matchup, just because Modern really rewards knowing your deck well.
And also, actually in Calgary, somehow magically, it was magic that I dodged Is It Phoenix.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that happens. I mean, it's really funny. So Ben has been on camera playing a Modern GP, the co-host that's not here, twice. And both times he played against Elves. And the first time he lost, he got stomped. And then he went to time. They drew.
That's right. He went to time because he wasn't very familiar with his deck.
Because Ben goes the GPs playing decks he's never played before, or
Right.
that he invented right beforehand.
And then loses to Elves.
And then the most recent one he won, but he was playing Is It Phoenix, which is a bad matchup, and he almost lost, but partially just because he literally had not played the deck once before playing at the GP. He played a version of it the night before, but it didn't have anything in the ice. It didn't have, I think it didn't have surgical extractions. It was missing a bunch of like key cards that he picked up
that he borrowed from me. He came to my house and borrowed those cards from me in the morning before the GP.
And so it's 1-1. We have to get you and Ben to play at some point, and then I need you to win because I can't have Ben winning. All right, promise? Okay, good. And then do you have any specific, there are a few different Elves decks out there. Which deck do you think is your favorite? Is it green-black? Is there any specific card choices that you like more than others?
Well, so I really, really like green-black for Shaman. And I was playing green-white for a while, but then a team event happened, and sideboard cards kind of conflicted with one of my teammates because it was Unified Modern, because they were playing Burn, I was playing green-white. Sideboards conflict. So then I switched to green-black because I had practiced with it for Vegas, because that's when I started with. Then I stuck to it because it looked like it was doing better in the meta than green-white. And some interesting card choices, though, were instead of 4 nettles or 4 clan colors, I decided to go half and half because the extra black mana dorks are really good. But then also combo Nettle Sentinel Elf that allows me to do a turn 3 kill and a possible turn 2 kill are also good. Also, I run Scoozes to Scavenging Ooze's main board because of all the Is It Phoenix, all the dredge running around. So
Makes sense.
Yeah, I was surprised Scavenging Ooze wasn't starting to see more play, and then it started seeing more play.
Well, it's especially good in Elves because you have like collected companies and lead the Stampedes to find it in the matchups where you need it. Like as long as your card that like shores up a bad matchup for you as a creature, you like are pretty likely to find it given all the like card draw for creatures that's in the deck.
Does Elves play what's the Invoke tutor spell?
Chord of Calling?
Yeah, do you play Quarter Calling?
not in the green black and green white. It helps you find your combo pieces. There are also clan colors that made the deck good. The green black one good because clan colors didn't go in green white because green white was comboing and green black was more aggressive.
What was the combo that you were playing in green white?
Devoted Druid, Vizier of Remedies, and Azuri, because Devoted Druid you can untap. Instead of getting the counter, it gets -1 of the counter, which is 0 counters, so you get infinite mana, activate Azuri infinite time, so they all have trample, and then you can attack. There's also another way of comboing. There were 2 Azuris in Devoted Druid, 2 Devoted Druids. You can tap, untap, tap, and then you can keep doing it because you're going to have land, probably on taps too. So then you can also use the lands. So then they'll get +3, so you can do it more and more and more. So then you activate Azuri infinite times because you'll also have
Yeah, because the devoted druids grow faster than the minus counters.
Yeah, so Azuri grows the devoted druids at 3 times for 6 mana, and you need only... Okay, yeah.
That's a cool combo.
That's a really cool combo. Okay.
And you use Collected Company to find your combo when you're like hard comboing versus like the green-black, which is more of a beatdown deck that can combo sometimes maybe with Shaman of the Pack.
So are there any specific play tips you have for players who want to maybe try picking up Elves for the first time?
Well, if you're playing green-black, you could cast Coco in response to Shaman. If you have 7 mana, you could go Shaman of the Pack, and in response to the Shaman trigger, Coco, get 2 or 3 more Elves, most likely, to go with Shaman, so that then you could get more damage in with Shaman instead of less. Also, you get 2 more creatures out faster for damage right away in case they get killed before they can attack. You also want to maybe use Heritage Druid and Nettle Sentinel to create a bunch of mana because you could play spells and tap Nettle Sentinel. And so then you can use that a lot. And then you could also cast. It's also tricky casting Coco at the right time. Most of the time, you want to do it at the end of your opponent's turn, unless you have a good reason to. The reasons, though, are sometimes during a big attack where stuff is going to die unless you get a Lord, you've got, pre-board 8 Lords in the deck, so you can do that. Or if you will have extra mana left over during a big attack to use Azuri, you can, in mid-attack, Azuri, pay 1, regenerate maybe some Elves, sometimes before an attack, because sometimes it'll help you decide, if I get a Lord, then this attack is great, but if I don't get a Lord, this attack is not very good. Mm-hmm. So it could also help you decide that.
Okay. And then with the new Mulligan Rule, do you know the new Mulligan Rule that's coming out, possibly?
Yeah, possibly.
Are you excited for the Mulligan Rule, or do you think it's going to make it harder or worse?
I think it's going to keep my deck the same, but I think it's going to, help some other decks. It might help Dredge. It might help some other decks that I have a bad matchup against, so I'm not crazy about it. So.
Okay.
I also like Elves, though, because I forgot to mention this earlier, but I just thought of it. I like Elves, too, because in school, my math is kind of easy for me because I do really well at math. I do some really hard math with my sister because she does math club at school, and so I like that type of math because it's more challenging. And so with Elves, you have a lot of challenging math that you need to do. So then you can overcome the challenging math, and it could also help you do better in school because you'll be doing challenging math here. But then in school, it'll help you get faster at the math you're doing there.
Got it. Oh,
yeah, totally. I started playing Pokemon first when I was probably 7, and I learned a lot of math and reading from Pokemon. And then eventually I started playing Magic when I was 10 or so, and I feel like I learned so much math and reading because there's a lot of complicated words on cards, and the names of cards always have interesting words in them that when I was 10 I hadn't necessarily seen a lot of those words, and I feel like it really taught me a lot when I was a kid.
I played Pokemon maybe for when I was 5 for a little bit with my sister and dad, but then I just was who cares about the card Pokemon? Magic's way better. So then I moved.
That's what I figured when I discovered Magic.
So I was the opposite. I played Magic first, and then it got banned, and I switched schools after it got banned.
It got banned at your school?
It got banned at the school because kids were trading expensive cards for not expensive cards, and parents got mad. Actually, I think it specifically got banned in our class, though, because we were playing in class. This was back in the day when, third grade had 33 kids in the classroom, so we could be in the back.
That's because no one in my class even knows how to play. They've heard of it, talk about it a lot in class, but it's mostly something the boys 6th graders who know of it, but not many people at my school know of it because it's still in an elementary school. But I'm thinking in middle school I might, or high school or college, to like do a magic club to teach play magic.
Yeah. What grade are you in?
3rd.
3rd grade. So I think I started playing in 4th grade, and even then you're way smarter than I was, because we like thought library was the sideboard. And so we had banned every card that said library on it because we weren't playing with sideboards.
I didn't even know what a sideboard was.
Yeah.
I actually had one of those tournament decks they used to sell that like was a deck that somebody played at Worlds, and it would be like there were cards in it that had like said sideboard on them, so you would know that was part of the sideboard. And I just had no idea what that meant. I just like played with the whole 75 shuffled together.
So when we started playing Magic, do you know what Portal is? Have you heard of the set Portal? So it was a set they made that was meant for kids and beginners and all of the cards, but they like decided to change the rules for the game. So they called, like, instead of calling it a library, they called it a deck. And instead of calling it, there was other ones that's like the most obvious one I can remember.
They called blocking intercepting for some reason.
Yep.
And like the power had a little sword next to it at the bottom of the card, and the toughness had a little shield. It looked really weird.
And there's like no instance.
Yeah, there were no
instants.
instants.
Only sorceries, but there were cards that said you could play this at any time. Like Counterspell was, or like a Counterspell variant. But because of that, when I tried playing regular Magic, all of the words were different. And so I think that's where the library deck thing came from.
Yeah.
Because we knew we had cards that said deck on it. So I didn't want to play with cards that said library.
Yeah, there were like sorceries that were like, you can only play this on your opponent's turn after they've declared attackers. It's like, that's not a sorcery.
Okay, so, and then I guess back to what you were saying about how it helps learn math. I say this a lot, where I am not good at Magic, jokingly, and so I want to play Control because it takes way less math to like be able to win than aggro or elves or combo, because I don't have to like count damage. I just have to just not die, which is great.
Boo, Control! Boo! Control is the worst deck ever made.
Okay. You and Shivan Bot would get along on that. He like hates control cards. So if you could play any deck that isn't Elves in Modern, which deck would you play?
I prefer Elves like a lot, but if I couldn't play it, I would probably play Dredge because I practiced all the different decks at home a bit. Because we would play one game as me Elves, switch, and I would like to, and so Dredge seems like pretty fun because and different, and I like different stuff because Dredge is like, your graveyard is huge. You don't want that, but then your graveyard is your hand, and your hand is technically stuff that you want to put in a graveyard to have another hand. And so it was interesting, and I like stuff that is like different or interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it has like a little bit of a similar play style in Elves in the sense that you're trying to put a lot of stuff into one spot and then win from that spot. Elves has it in play, and Dredge has it in the graveyard.
Kinda, I guess. I mean, you're like going wide with creatures.
You're like micromanaging like resources in an area.
I feel like that's just Magic, right?
Sure.
Is micromanaging resources in an area?
That's fair.
I don't know.
All right. So we talked about how many Grand Prix you've been to. Why do you like going to Grand Prix so much?
I like going to Grand Prix because I like to compete in the main event, and it's challenging. It's challenging to stay all around and tiring. I can also set goals, achieve them, then look back to it and feel super happy about it. Plus, I can learn a lot from GPs. Also, I meet lots of new people, and especially cosplayers, because at my second ever Grand Prix, I played in a cosplayer named Ariel came by, and she said, "What's your favorite planeswalker?" And I said Nyssa because she was my favorite, and that is how. And so she made my costume with some of her other cosplay friends. So that's how I got my costume, which allowed me to meet other cosplayers that I'm now friends with. They also always have something to do. You're never waiting around unless it's in between rounds. Like, if you just show up, there's always stuff for you to do. And if you don't want to play in any events, you can just play with friends that you have.
I've almost stopped competing in main events at GPs because I'd rather hang out with friends and rather hang out with cool people at them and do the side events and hang out with cosplayers, because that just, you can play the actual event is so much of a commitment, and I'm normally just going to spend more of my time there. Ben's job is to go compete in the event. My job is to come hang out.
It sounds like you got an easy job.
I know, it's great.
Yeah. Ben's got the harder job.
Yeah.
That's true.
But yeah, I think it's cool, like, to compete and learn. I do feel like when I go to a Grand Prix and I play in the main event, I learn so much more about my deck than playing in like 10 FNMs. Even though, like, you know, a GP isn't as many rounds as 10 FNMs, it's still like you feel like you learn so much, and I think that's really cool.
When you're getting ready for a GP, how do you get prepared?
I get prepared because I was talking about before, I would play one game as Elves to start a match. But then I would switch to the other deck my dad's playing, get a feel of how it works, then switch back and finish the match I had started with Elves. We also watch videos of pro people playing the deck, and I get advice from pros because my dad asks pros for advice so that I can play the deck better. And the advice that pros give us, we put on a tip sheet that my dad makes for me to help me prepare, and we also played a bit with them, and like if there was an interesting play that happened and it was a hard decision, and so in case of a similar situation, we would write it down on the tip sheet in case of that. I also went to local events and played in those. And that's how I got into sideboarding, because at a local event, someone said, "Hey, does she do sideboarding?" And my dad said no, because she'll have to memorize all the things to put into each and every one of the decks. And then he said, and he didn't know what my dad was talking about, and he was like, "Oh, well, the rule must have changed." So then we prepared a sideboarding guide for sideboarding, because sideboarding just gives you a pretty big advantage too, because you can like tune your deck to better face the other deck.
I think more players should use a sideboard guide. There's no reason not to. And even if you're really familiar with your deck, like other people's decks are constantly changing, or you're changing your sideboard based on the metagame. And like there's so many times when I'm playing and like I'm playing a matchup that I should totally know my sideboard plan, and I'm just sitting there looking at my sideboard like, what am I doing again?
I also think like knowing which cards to cut is probably even the hardest part, where it's like,
where it's like, oh, I want these 5 cards, I'm gonna cut these 4, and then I'm like, wait, what's the last card?
Yeah. Like having a guide and knowing like, oh, I need to take out these cards because I've actually done the work here and I know what I'm doing, instead of being like, do I cut my 4th lightning bolt? Oh no. Is really helpful. We did, there's an episode we did a while back, and I think we probably should revisit sideboarding soon, because that was almost 2 years ago. We're an old podcast. It was that when you make your sideboard, it's almost better to know which cards you are cutting in matchups, and then making sure you have enough cards to bring in for those matchups, not the reverse. Not be like, oh, I have 2 cards against artifacts, I'll like cut something against them. Be like, oh no, I'm cutting 4 cards against affinity. What 4 cards can I bring in? And
that's like why you see people doing splits in their sideboard of like 1 Nile Spellbomb, 2 Surgical Extraction, or whatever, because like those come in against slightly different decks, but against strategy, just bring them all in. Rather than just like 3 Surgical Extraction, but then you're short 1 sideboard card in like a matchup where you might bring in Spellbomb because it draws a card where you just have too many dead cards.
Right. You're ready for your GP. What's the farthest you've traveled to go to a GP?
The farthest I've traveled is France.
Wow. Okay.
Leon, France. And it was fun because I got to play with cards that were in a different language. And luckily I knew most of the cards. Only one judge happened or occurred, because it was on Teamer Battle Rage, and I had never faced Teamer Battle Rage at the time. So that was the only time that happened, but it wasn't just in French. It was in many languages, French, Spanish, and etc.
That's crazy. I don't know if I could play in a foreign language, maybe a modern tournament, because I couldn't play in a foreign French tournament. I would not know what half the cards did.
Yeah.
Then I would get wrecked by every other.
Yeah. When I was working at GP's, the owner of our shop ended up in Chile for something else. It wasn't for the shop. It was something else he was doing there. And it was pre-release weekend. So he decided to go to a pre-release in Chile. And he speaks a little bit of Spanish. But so he was playing in a pre-release with cards he'd never played with before in Spanish, and he was struggling through, and he was good at the game, so he was kind of winning, but he had a bunch of draws because he was taking too long to read the cards.
I think I've gone to the pre-release in Hong Kong. Now no longer more, but there was a while for 2 years. I was at pre-releases in Hong Kong more than I was in the US. And luckily they're in English, so I didn't have to deal with that problem.
Yeah.
Going to Hong Kong is cool too, because it's kind of like time traveling, because when you get there, you lose a day. So if you leave on Thursday, you'll get there on Saturday. But then when you come back, you get back 4 hours earlier than you left. So you'll leave at 5 p.m. on a Friday and get back before lunch on a Friday.
Yeah.
Here. And it's very surreal.
I also do speak medium in Spanish because my old nanny Laura was from Mexico, and some of my other nannies are from Mexico, and I take a Spanish class at school that I like. So
that's cool. So you've made day 2 of a GP. That is extremely impressive. We saw you right afterwards because you came to the MMCast meetup. You made it in GP LA. How did it feel? Why did you want to make a day 2 of a GP so badly?
I wanted to make day 2 because it was something I could look back to when I got older and say, oh, wow, I did this. And I was the youngest person ever to make day 2. And I also wanted to prove that kids, girls, women could play the game, because people could look at it and say, if she can do this, so can I. Also, Magic is the most fun game in the world.
Definitely.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
It would make me happy that kids are playing the game more. So
yeah.
You made day 2 of a GP. How did it feel?
It felt a sense of achievement and excitement because I had done it. I was the youngest player to make day 2. Maybe the first. Maybe I'm not sure, but I might have been the first girl under 18 to make day 2, and it was something I could back to, and it took a long time. 23 GPs. It took me 23 GPs to do it, so I was very, very proud. I also got to see my dad cry.
I remember seeing my dad cry for the first time. That was cool. So other than Modern, what other formats of Magic do you play?
I play Limited, Standard, Modern, because we've been talking about Modern, Legacy, and Commander. And I would really want to play Pauper, a lot. And then maybe get into Vintage and Brawl, but Pauper's the one I really, really want to get into.
So what do you play in all those formats? What do you play in Standard and Commander?
in standard, I play Celestia tokens, and in Legacy Elves,
That makes sense.
and in Commander, I also play Elves.
Who's your commander?
Zuri.
That's
Renegade
a good one.
leader.
That's a good one.
That's a terrifying one.
So if you played Pauper, you'd be playing Pauper Elves, right? Yep. Lissalana Huntmaster and crew.
If I can play Elves, I will.
What in Pauper are you missing for Elves that you don't have?
No, we just haven't had the time to get together deck.
Okay.
We just have been super busy, but
Yeah, I understand that. I have a bunch of piles of half-made decks that I'm like, I should make this someday, and it just hasn't happened. So, other than Magic, what other hobbies do you have? You said you're really busy.
I play soccer mostly in the fall because that's when soccer season is. I practice a lot in soccer. Like at school, I would. My friend Jayan, he is very, very good at soccer. He is doing soccer internationally now. He's also my age.
Wow.
We would ask him to. Me and my friend would both ask him, "Hey, could you teach us some soccer?" So I practice soccer quite a bit. I also like doing gymnastics. I can do a one-handed cartwheel, and I am close to an aerial, which is a no-handed cartwheel.
Wow.
I also like to do ice skating. I'm in level 4 of basics. That's where I actually would have been instead of this, but I chose to do this instead.
Oh, thank you.
So I do that most of the time every Tuesdays. I take lessons 5:15 to 5:45. They're 30 minutes. And so I also like doing skiing. I have skied a few Black Diamonds.
Wow.
So actually recently last week I skied patrolmans at Mammoth.
Snowboarding or skiing in Mammoth or Big Bear is really impressive. Last time I was in Mammoth, I really hurt myself, and my sister left me on top of a hill because she's very good at it and didn't think I was hurt, and so I just had to crawl my way down slowly as she was just slipping by me, being like, "You're okay, goodbye."
Skiing is tough.
Yep. I bet. And
Before even you were playing Magic.
Wow. So back to Magic. Modern Horizons is coming out. We're going to get a bunch of legacy cards and commander cards printed and new cards printed into Modern. Which cards are you most excited, or which type of cards are you most excited to see printed in Modern Horizons?
And some specific reprints I would like to see are Curian Ranger, Wirewood Symbiote, and Priest of Titania. I can't wait to see what they do to my deck if they get printed.
Yeah. Well, because you play all those in your Legacy Elves deck, right?
I don't play Priest of Titania in my Legacy Elves deck, but I play it in my Commander deck, and it's a way that I have infinite mana to win in my Commander deck. But Curian Ranger and Wirewood Symbiote are both in my Legacy deck, though.
Yeah, those are really nice ones.
I really want Wirewood Symbiote in Modern. I think
that'd
that's
be cool.
It
has cool gameplay because you get to save your elves from removal sometimes, and
Or block the return them.
Yeah, you can return Elvish Visionary to your hand. Legacy Elves deck usually play Elvish Visionary when Modern decks sometimes don't.
I might be playing it a tiny bit more this year, but there just aren't many Legacy events that I need to practice for.
Yeah, it's true.
That's why we want all these cool cards in Modern, because there's
Modern then you can play with Wirewood Symbiote in Modern, and it's all good.
I'm excited for Goblin cards more than I think there are cards that they just
enemy of elves, goblins.
Sometimes they get along, right?
I guess control decks are the real
don't.
enemy of elves.
I see a goblin and I'm playing elves, I smash it.
Oh wow. Okay. So all right, some anti-goblin propaganda going on. So there's obviously a bunch of GPs going up. What are some of the GPs you're going to this year?
Seattle, Dallas, Detroit, Vegas, for sure. Seattle and Dallas, though, are instead of the 2-week sleepaway camp that I would have been going to, but I would rather play Magic. Also, it was less money to do them instead of Sleepaway Camp. It would be more money to do Sleepaway Camp than Seattle and Dallas, which I'm also happy about, because then my mom's more okay with it.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. I think Seattle and Vegas we're gonna be at.
Yeah.
And then I hope to go to the Team Modern event in Indianapolis, Atlanta, Montreal, Phoenix, Richmond, Columbus, and Portland. The only reason Montreal that was on the maybe list is because my mom, I have family in Montreal that I've never been. So I would get to see my family in Montreal too, and it wouldn't be just a Magic trip. It would also be like a little longer, but not too much longer. But
that's cool. It's always nice to like go to all these cities to play Magic, and you get to like visit people. You get to visit family or friends who live in other cities.
Yeah.
Have you seen the new Nyssa?
The new Nyssa, yeah.
Are you excited?
Actually, my friend Nadine, who lives in Switzerland, got to preview it.
Oh, cool.
So fair, because but I was excited that I heard a new Nyssa was coming out. So
yeah,
it's awesome.
It's also a pretty good Nyssa.
Yeah, it's really good. For those who don't know, the internet and people listening, because this is a podcast, Nyssa Who Shakes the World is 3 green. It has a static ability because that's the new thing. Whenever you tap a forest for mana, add an additional green mana. Its +1 is put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to one target non-creature land you control. You untap it. It becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with vigilance and haste, and it's still land, and that's forever. And then it has a -8. You get an emblem with lands you control have indestructible, and then you can search your library for any number of forest cards and put them onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. And it comes in at 5 loyalty. All right, how excited are you for War of the Spark?
I'm pretty excited, actually, and it's come in the pre-release soon.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, we're super excited.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be really fun to play in Limited. You can have like a bunch of Planeswalkers in your draft deck. Usually if you have one Planeswalker in your draft deck, you're like, wow, this is such a great deck. And now it's like, oh, I just have 6 Planeswalkers in my draft deck. No big deal.
Who wants? The more the merrier. So where can people find you on the internet, or where do you want to shout out?
On my Twitter, which is what I use the most, at Dana Fischer MTG is my Twitter handle. And Fischer is also spelled Fischer, unlike most. So.
Yeah. And there'll be links in the show notes of this episode, both on the website that we're on, collected.company, as well as YouTube and the podcast app that you use. I use iTunes, but there are other ones out there. Make sure also to follow us on Twitter. We're at the MMCast. I'm at Kes Wiley.
I'm at DUDARDD. And you can also find the usual host, Ben, at Ben Bateman Media.
Yep. And those are pretty much true across all things. I'm like even at Kes Wiley on Xbox Live.
Now there's going to be a bunch of fans adding you on Xbox Live.
It's time. Come on, Apex. Let's do it. And then make sure to follow our sister podcast, The Command Zone. They do amazing Commander content every single week. They also do game nights. Jimmy and Josh are up to all this really cool stuff. I was on an episode last week, the week before they previewed their card, talking about Modern Horizons as well. So if you want some like Commander Modern Horizons speculation, that's a good place to go. And then there's a bunch of other shout outs that were in the pre-recorded thing that I don't know off the top of my head, but Facebook, Patreon, all that good stuff. Make sure to check it out. Thank you so much for coming, Dana. I hope you had a good time. Did you have fun?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to hanging out in Seattle. I think that's the next time we're all going to be at a GP at the same time. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for your attention. See you later, alligator.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.